compassion towards freedom. Hello everyone. We enter into a new contemplation with compassion, perhaps one of the more well-known virtues, and yet at the same time we are looking towards this esoteric quality, and as it moves us towards freedom, we get to understand these virtues in a new way. Compassion, in its original meaning, to suffer with, is something that is not easy for the human soul in our age, because we are not really willing to suffer. And to suffer with, actually we have to overcome ourselves. We have to extend beyond ourselves to really experience and live into and live with the life experiences of another. And it is in these indications that we can understand something about this word freedom, another word that is used so commonly today, so needed in a way for our understanding and for our development. And yet here we are given this combination of compassion to suffer with, to overcome or go beyond myself into the life of another, into the experience of the other, that is what helps to develop freedom. How different a quality of freedom is understood here compared to the freedom that we call for in our selfhood and in our selfishness. Now, these esoteric works deepen our understanding of the true mysteries. And it's in these mysteries that we realize actually we've often perceived life and what is the advancement and gain and development of ourselves incorrectly. In one way, we can understand this through this esoteric knowledge that part of our development comes from taking hold of ourselves, growing our capacities, but the other part of our development comes from supporting the development of the other. Now that's done in all sorts of ways. For instance, you could educate yourself in a particular field, perhaps architecture, perhaps medicine. And that development through that education grows forces, strengths, capacities, insights in you. But when you then apply that into the world, when you bring that you have grown actually into the life of others, even if it's something that they can perceive without your presence, like an architectural building, or something that is engaged with in the dynamic of the relationship in perhaps medicine or some other form. It's in that giving, in that growth and development of the other, that the other half of our development unfolds. Now we can really hold those pictures, this idea that one wing is developed from what we really take hold of and grow in our own being's growth and development. And the other wing is in the other's growth and development. And with that image, we might be able to penetrate this in this relationship to these virtues. Some of the virtues are not so well known. In a way, we are almost a little freer with them in our inner exploration, because we don't really understand them, that we haven't grasped them intellectually. But when we are working with something like compassion, often we're quite removed from understanding the deeper knowledge of them because we have grasped them intellectually. We have a grasp, in a way, instinctually around a kind of freedom, but we're asked here to deepen that understanding, to go beyond ourselves and to consider this, that freedom or liberation can actually unfold when it is in giving and in serving, in being with, in walking with, having deep compassion for another. I've also found it quite interesting to contemplate these virtues in the various ways that they work into our lives. Now, I've encountered people that have struggled so strongly with this sense of their freedom. And interestingly, when you really look at what they struggle with, is they're struggling with a capacity for compassion. It appears to them as a feelings of unfreedom. And anyone that is unable to go beyond themselves, anyone that's unable to go beyond their own limitations, in a way is unfree. And so compassion helps us to go beyond our own limitations. And our own limitations are so numerous. And yet the limitations, once we have in a way suffered them, break open into something new. And so what are the limitations in my own personal life that I can suffer in myself, have compassion for myself, that will allow myself to go beyond my own limitations and lead me towards freedom? And then the question, what are the limitations in me that are not as personal to my biography, but more connected to my relationship to the world? Perhaps those limitations that have come through the collective conditioning. Perhaps those limitations that have come because I'm born to a particular family or culture or race or experience. And then we recognize in that these limitations that are so deep within the human being are not overcome through my suffering of myself. They're not developed through going through my personal pain journey to break open to something new, but they're transformed in the compassion, the suffering with someone else's journey. Now, whenever we awaken to an esoteric insight, it's always important to realize that those things can be misused. For instance, the law of karma, how many people do good in order for themselves to benefit in the future, breaks that law in some way because the doer is still selfish. And so here we have the same thing with this deepened understanding of compassion to suffer with that leads to really deep levels of liberation or freedom, that we can't enter that with the will to that personal gain. It still is teaching us that all the virtues are working to complete our transformation of selfishness. And really the selfishness is what can hold back the real transformative steps. Now, this is always an inner struggle on the path that one has to be aware of. Do I truly work towards love, or am I really clouding myself, enclosing myself with an atmosphere of selfishness under this guise of working towards love? So here we have this wonderful insight through the virtues again, just as in the last virtue of selflessness leading to catharsis, this deeper purification, we have something there revealing again the compassion to suffer with is the deeper liberation. Now that's not a common thought today, that I can find the freedom I seek through the suffering with the other. So we are often seeking this freedom in many ways. It's common for me to hear today people say things like, that's not my path, it might be your path, but it's not my path. This is not my way, it could be your way, but it's not my way. Everyone needs to stay in their own lane, or you do your life, I'll do my life. And there are aspects to that are really relevant. There are many paths, and yet, as one wonderful teacher of mine once said, I am your karma also, meaning that when we engage with people, when we meet people, we're not there to meet them to leave each other untouched or untransformed by the meeting. And it's true that someone's path may be very different from your path, but it's also true that if we can really meet, if we can really experience who that other is, and they get to experience really who you are on that journey, then we are taking this life and the life with the other further than saying, this is not my path, that might be your path. How do we really walk into the future in ways that knowing that my development and what I've come to through my own experiences are not just for me? Your development, what you have come to, what is your experiences of life are not just for you. This is the extraordinary dynamic of the life sphere. And when we really understand that, not just in the simple forms that we perceive, but in these deep mysteries of the growth and development and transformation of ourselves and others, we will also recognize that actually it might not be my way, but how can I experience your way, and how can you experience my way? And so when I asked this friend, teacher of mine, oh, aren't you leaving perhaps you're not leaving the other free by giving your opinion so strongly or your experience so strongly. But this response, but I am your karma, was something that has really lived with me to understand. How do we really bring ourselves into the life of the other in a way that could help and develop the other's life? And how can I do anything that bring the life of what is truly my own experience into that? What an extraordinary picture that your life, all of your experiences, were not just for you. And the other's life and all of their experiences are not just for them. We start to understand this deeply mysterious aspect of the collective consciousness and the united life and our united path. Can one person really develop alone in isolation? So these two experiences I have of the person that I walked with for a long time that struggled with freedom, but actually struggled with compassion, and someone else that actually really brought themselves to the life of the other out of this compassion of something very deep in their sharing. So I hope that that offers something in your own contemplation. Each of us, of course, because of our own lives, because of our own encounter with experiences, are going to have a different hue or different way of speaking and expressing and bringing about our connection to these virtues. And it's this working that question through in ourselves as the preparation for entering into the practice. Because once we enter into the practice, once we actually enter into building the quality and the beingness of compassion in our hearts, we are really trying to unite ourselves with a activity of beingness and not an idea or a thought or a concept, but an activity of beingness. But we prepare that way through the thought, through the contemplation, through assessing and inquiring into our own lives. How do I understand these? Do I understand these virtues? How may I grow these virtues? So now we will enter into the practice. And for those of you that are coming to this new, you may want to go back to the introduction to the virtues, just so that you have some of those basic outlines of each of the months. And those of you that are working with the verse, I will bring that in as well. So we start, as always, with an exercise that helps us to put our everyday self to one side. And I choose each of these exercises as a supportive way to the virtue and another kind of insight to that virtue. However, you can use whichever restfulness of soul exercise that you feel drawn to. Although you may also wish to enter into a new one each month so that you can learn a new tool and see yourself in relationship to it. Does that work for me? Is it useful for me? Does it bring me to the place where I can put that everyday self to one side? So today I want to introduce one that is called the smile exercise, or at least that's what I call it. And it's an interesting one because, when we are working with suffering and suffering with, we also need to ensure that we can, in a way, come back to some ease in our own being. And the smile exercise can really help that. Simply close your eyes And first of all, smile, just so you have a sense of what that quality is like in your being. The smile is a deep rest in relaxation, but it has an opening activity with it. It's not like a falling out rest where you completely let go, but it stays a rest that stays in this open, active place. Often people that do this exercise can feel a little energized after it. And now we go through different parts of our body, and although this may sound strange, we try to make these body parts smile. We're not trying to just rest, but bring this kind of smile to our whole system. So first of all, we start with the feet and see if we can help our feet to smile. You don't need to move the body. It's just bringing that quality of opening, smiling into the feet. And then we might move to the calves, the lower legs, and let that smile help it to smile. And then to the knees. Can be a little harder for the knees to smile sometimes. That part of our body that goes forward into life. First forward, and yet the knees also need to smile. And then we move to the thighs, and the thighs smile, and the buttocks and the whole pelvis area. And you can be aware of what's easier to smile and what struggles to smile. In parts of the body where there's tension, or even further than that, pain, we can try to work more deeply to smile into those areas. And bringing that smile into the lower abdomen, the hip area, the lower back, smiling. Into the stomach, the solar plexus area, the middle of the back, smiles. And then you could bring that into the chest area, the upper back, smiling. And then really see if you can help your shoulders to smile. And from your shoulders down your arms to the upper arm and forearm, until that smile is spread throughout the hands. Into the neck and throat. Allow that to smile. And then we come to the face and see if we can get the ears to smile, the nose, the chin. How much the personality clings to the face. And if we can really smile, we can put that to one side. The eyes are smiling. The forehead, the back of the head, the top of the head. Now, of course, when you do this practice, you can do it in your own time. But at the end, you would then scan your body and just check, see if everything's still smiling. Are those knees still smiling? So everything is still in the smile as we've put our everyday cares and worries, the personal particular self, to one side to be present in this smile. And then, as usual, we would bring our attention to the third eye, the pineal gland, with the formula, I am. And slowly and consciously, we move our attention to the back of the head, down the spine, and into the center around the heart. Compassion, seeing if we can be with that quality. Leo, invigorate with senses might, matured existence of all worlds, perceptive element of beings, towards the firm resolve to be. In the surging shine of life, in the prevailing pains of growth, with senses might arise. And as always, for those that are taking these steps, you then just extinguish the verse and just stay present to the inner activity.